Trudeau's refugee rush. I'll explain to you why we're being lied to by the Liberals again. Plus, details on the budget, more lies you won't be happy with. It's February 22nd. I'm Brian Lilley on The Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government about why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
We are being lied to. We're being lied to on more than one front. I've told you about the various issues surrounding the Trudeau government's refugee rush. The latest is that officials, well, they've now said that very few, their words not mine, very few of the refugees that have come to Canada, of the more than 21,000 so far, very few of them have come from refugee camps. Think about that. We were told we had to help people in the camps. That's why we had to move so fast, bring so many people here, stop them from suffering in the camps. But they aren't in the camps. They were living in apartments in places like Beirut. Why do we know this? Well, that's what I want to talk to you about right now. The secrecy around all of this. We should have known this ages ago. We're not asking about how many or how they got here today. That's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about the secrecy of this Trudeau government. This refugee rush is a major government program, and it's being pushed through without oversight. Most in the media, they don't care to ask tough or difficult questions. Most, well, they won't ask anything that would make the project look bad. But it shouldn't matter what the project is. Governments need to be scrutinized. That isn't happening here. Instead, time and again, the Trudeau Liberals are ensuring we won't know anything about this refugee rush and how bungled it is until it's all over. I'm going to show you how this is happening. I'm going to show you the Liberals promising that they would bring about openness and transparency. I'm going to show you their claims that data should be open by default. I'm going to show you that they claimed Canadians deserve to know how their governments operate. And then I'm going to show you what they're doing now. Check out how long Justin Trudeau has been talking about making government more open. It was the current Prime Minister's only private member's bill in the last Parliament when he was the third-party leader. He thought the Conservatives were too closed off, too secretive. He wanted to break everything wide open. Here he is in June of 2014 talking about his bill and what he wants to do.
The ability of a citizen to access information on what a government is doing with their tax dollars in their name is one of the fundamental tenets of building confidence around government.
Then during the election, Trudeau put out his platform, which had a whole section on open government. Let me read to you from page 24. Remember, this is a government that says they're going to be more open, and they're being anything but. Their platform said, "It is time to shine more light on government and ensure that it remains focused on the people it is meant to serve. Government and its information should be open by default. Data paid for by Canadians belongs to Canadians. We will restore trust in our democracy, and that begins with trusting Canadians." I only wish they were trusting us right now. Trudeau also made the claim during the campaign that he would be more open in government. Here he is making the boast at a campaign stop in Montreal.
We'll run an open and transparent government. We will make information more accessible by requiring transparency to be a fundamental principle across the federal government.
Now, I get they haven't been in power that long, that they can't change the system overnight, but they're still bragging about how open they are. In fact, it was just last week, Friday, Treasury Board Secretary Scott Bryson bragging in question period about how open the Liberals are compared to those bad Conservatives, all because the Liberals released some 4-year-old government background documents on Conservative budget cuts.
Our government has released this information because government information belongs to Canadians. Our government will continue to be open and transparent with Canadians because we believe that's the right thing for a government to do, because we believe in open by default government.
Open by default. We can only wish, actually. I mean, wouldn't that be nice, especially on this refugee file? Instead, their modus operandi is closed by default. Consider what I've just shown you. Consider the clips of Justin Trudeau in 2014 and 2015, the campaign statements. Consider all that as I share with you again some of the roadblocks put up by this Liberal government. We asked for simple requests through access to information, such as asking for a list of the groups acting as private sponsors for refugees. It's pretty simple access to information request, but instead of giving us a list, which surely exists, and replying within 30 days, the government told us, they sent us a letter saying, we're going to take a 300-day extension on that. That's almost a year. We asked them to show us how they were picking the most vulnerable. They keep saying they want the most vulnerable, so how are they doing that? What kind of keywords were they looking for in selecting the most vulnerable? Were they looking for LGBT? Was it Yazidi? Was it Christian? Instead, we're not getting a list. We're being told 300 days for this information. We asked simply for information on the group of refugees the Prime Minister met at Toronto's airport back in December. Again, we were told, take a 300-day delay. This may not sound like a big deal, but remember, Trudeau said government should be open by default. Canadians should know what the government is doing with their tax dollars. Data paid for by Canadians belongs to Canadians. That's what they claimed. But instead, this government is putting up roadblocks saying, wait 300 days. As I said, almost a year for basic information. But why are they doing that? Do you know why they're doing that? It's simple. They don't want any information getting out there until this whole project is over. Something an official actually said to me in an email last week when I asked about all the hotels that we're renting to put the refugees in. See, the government is already paying for hundreds of hotel rooms for refugees at a big cost, and more requests are going up every week, it seems. So after seeing more requests for more hotels, I wanted to know how many hotels we're using. It's a simple question. They should have given me a firm number for the night before. They could have given me a ballpark. It would have been easy for them. I know the department has this information because the contracts they award to the hotels stipulate that each day the winning hotels must report in a spreadsheet format to the department. So did they give me a list that they say it's 800 hotels, 1,000 hotels, 1,500? No, they gave me BS and bafflegab, followed by a line of the truth. Let me read to you from the email. Refugees arrive daily and permanent housing also becomes available daily. This means that the number of refugees in hotels fluctuates constantly and we're unable to provide a number. The total number of rooms contracts also fluctuate depending on ongoing needs in destination communities. Final data on the project, including hotel usage, will be available when the project concludes. When the project concludes. Wouldn't you say that's rather convenient for a government that doesn't want scrutiny? Unfortunately, it's not just me or the Rebel or other media that they're blocking, but MPs as well. Conservative Member of Parliament Aaron O'Toole, a member of the Commons Public Safety Committee, said MPs are being blocked from getting the information they need and from studying this issue, and he thinks it's all to block scrutiny on the refugee rush.
This is clearly an attempt by the Liberal government to delay examination of two things. When Parliament resumed, we asked for the Public Safety Committee to do two immediate studies. One on the Syrian refugee screening process, because there's a lot of genuine questions. The second was on radicalization. So we've been asking for weeks for this. And then, of course, this week, we hear the terrible tale of 12 young women from Canada going to join ISIS and have families, and some have had children. Minister Goodale has talked, and his office has talked to media about radicalization efforts, but they're blocking the committee from actually looking at this. So the two most pressing security issues facing our country, the committee is blocking, and that's really concerning.
We deserve better as Canadians. We deserve better as citizens. I've already explained how the refugees deserve better. We promised them the world. We're not delivering, and it's costing all of us big time. But it's very hard to find out data. We should know an awful lot more about what's going on. In the United States, members of Congress can ask for and get briefings on basic information that our MPs are blocked from getting. Trudeau and company promised open government. They promised transparency. They promised openness by default. Once again, they're not delivering.
Want to have dinner with Faith Goldie? Grab a drink with Brian Lilley. Talk politics with Ezra. You can do it all on the Rebel Cruise. This November, join us for great debates, gourmet meals, and gorgeous scenery as we sail from Fort Lauderdale around beautiful Caribbean islands. It's an intimate week where you can really get to know your favorite Rebel personalities and meet other Rebel lovers too. Space is limited, so visit therebelcruise.ca to sign up now.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta.
Well, we've done the digging that the other media won't on the files related to refugees. We've been showing you time and again how the Trudeau government stonewalls. We've been showing you how they lied to us about where these refugees were coming from. They're not coming from camps. They're coming from apartments. Ray Hurd, political analyst, former journalist, former director of communications to Prime Minister John Turner, and an all-around good guy, joins me now from Toronto. Ray, this is disturbing to me, the way the story changes all the time, and they're not being very open. They promised openness, they promised transparency. They're not being very open. It's like they don't want any scrutiny of a project that they should be very proud of.
Yes, I've heard about these reports, no pun intended, heard about, but basically the problem seems to be this, Brian, that many of them were in apartments, but they wanted to leave, and that implies to me that they may be middle-class people, artisans and workers who may be able, if they can learn English or maybe some of them French, and they can get housing in Canada, they may be relatively stable immigrants or refugees. Well, that's the good news.
I don't hold there. Sure yeah, hold there, because one of the few things that Immigration Minister John McCallum has said is that the people we're selecting have lower skill level than the privately sponsored refugees, and that these are the most vulnerable. But for a project that they keep trumpeting and that you would think they would be proud of, they're being very secretive. I think that it's being run badly. I don't think that it's being run in a way that's fair to the Canadian taxpayers to hold people up in a hotel for 6 weeks and pay exorbitant prices for food and shelter. I don't think that's fair to the refugees to do it that way, and I don't think it's fair to the settlement services agencies to bring all of these people in when even in Vancouver they're saying, hold on, don't give us 1,100 more. We haven't housed the people we have yet.
I have a friend who owns a lot of apartment buildings, and he offered many of them for up to 1,000 refugees. And he makes 2 points. The first is the privately sponsored refugees are doing well. The government-sponsored ones, and maybe this confirms McCallum was right and I'm wrong when I said I thought they were trained and skilled, those people often have families of 8 or 10 people. Now, my client can't make apartments available because no 2-bedroom apartment that he owns can take 10 people. So this is a problem that has to be addressed. I think it's fair to say that McCallum, compared to the other ministers, has been fairly transparent, but the problem has to be addressed of who are they really? I hope, and I don't know this, that many of them are Christians and Yazidis and Kurds, because they are the ones who are getting killed by ISIS and Assad.
I wish you were right. I wish you were right, Ray. Unfortunately, again, not the case. In the privately sponsored, yes. I know that my parish in Ottawa sponsored a refugee family, Christian family, fleeing Syria and brought them over. They arrived just over a week ago. But when we've quizzed the minister and his senior officials on this, first off, they told us that it was wrong to prioritize religious and ethnic minorities, even though they will admit those are the people being targeted by ISIS, targeted by Assad. Even Assad's own sect of Islam, the Alawites, are being targeted by ISIS. So, yeah. I mean, that would be a religious minority. But they said, no, we can't do that, and it's wrong to do that. They did promise that they were going to prioritize LGBT refugees, but when quizzed on how they're doing that, they're very circumspect. So my sense is they're taking in whoever the UN gives them on a list and whoever will agree to come to Canada. I
think some of them are screened not by the Canadian authorities, but by the United Nations. And I instinctively don't trust the United Nations because it's a fudge factory and a haven for tyrants. And I also think it's interesting, Harper takes a lot of flack on this, which is undeserved. I think McCallum has been circumspect in being honest to say they couldn't take in 25,000 by January the 1st. That's impossible. We've now got another deadline, which I think is the end of March, and we'll see if they get them in by then. But I would rather they took more time to do it properly than to rush all this.
Well, you know what, Ray? Let's talk about that, the fact that they decided to rush. I mean, whether you like it or not, the government has committed to bring in 25,000 or more. They've already brought in 21 and a half, almost 22,000. They've screened another 5,000 that are slated to come, and they said they're going to keep going. It could be as high as 50,000. But they're bringing them over so fast that they're being put up in hotels. As I documented the other day, $61 a day is what they pay the hotels to feed them. $15 for breakfast, $16 for lunch, $30 for dinner. For a family of four, I mean, you said your friend who has a lot of real estate.
8 to 10.
8 to 10, right?
In a family.
Okay, but let's just say family of four. That's $244 a day, $1,708 a week just for food paid to the hotels. Can you imagine trying to have a food budget for a week of $1,700? You'd eat like a king. And this is money going to hotels that win the contracts to house these people. They're shipped over. I mean, if you did this slower, as you said, we wouldn't have these crazy costs.
And being involved in this, my great criticism, a few private companies that own apartment buildings and hotels, including my friends, which is Main Street Equity in Calgary, have been very generous in giving them free for a certain number of months and then giving a discounted rate. I think that over the board, the hotel and apartment industry of Canada should be much more generous, as a few pathfinders have been. And it's a funny thing about Canada. The further west I go, Alberta and BC, the more generous Canadians seem to be there. And also, where are the provincial governments here? Kathleen Wynne never escapes a photo op here. She should be doing more. The premiers have a responsibility to do it. Out east, they need people to do work that ordinary Canadians won't do. So the burden has got to be spread. McCallum does have a new title. They all have new titles. Yeah. His is Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. But you can't expect the federal government to do everything, because it's a shared national responsibility, and the private sector should have done a lot more.
Well, unfortunately,
but not enough.
Unfortunately, McCallum and the feds are keeping people out. Let me shift gears a little bit, because there's been a big news announcement today unrelated to the refugee file, although the refugee file is just adding to what we're talking about here, and that's the deficit. Bill Morneau, the finance minister, said the deficit is going to be $18.4 billion. But of course, that's a false number, Ray, because that number, there's two reasons it's false, at least. One, that number does not include new program spending, and the Liberals have promised lots of that. And two, it bases it's based on economic indicators that would say oil at $40 a barrel. Of course, it's at $30 a barrel or less. So it's, pie in the sky, rose-colored glasses assumptions. And before they've added in their new spending, I'm worried the deficit's going to be $25 to $30 billion. Some are saying well over $30 billion. I don't see the reason for this. We are not in a huge economic downturn like we were in 2008 when I railed against the Conservatives having a $60 billion deficit.
I would say that once again, Justin's broken promises. The only promise he's kept is withdrawing our fighter jets from the war against ISIS. He promised to do that. He's done it, which shames me as a Canadian. They should be bombing ISIS. But getting back to the budget, this breaks two promises. One is the one you've referred to. They came in on a pledge to keep it down to 10 billion, and it will probably be over 30 with the extra money they're giving away. But the other promise they made, and people forget this today, is they promised to balance the budget by 2019-2020. They say they can't do that now. So that means if you look ahead, you will see that just before the next election, the deficit will not be paid down, the debt will not be paid down, they will be much greater than anyone expected. And that's a reality.
I asked Bill Morneau about that last week because he started to make noises to the effect that he wasn't going to meet that pledge. I mean, even when they were talking about the deficits being as high as 20 to 25 billion, they would still say, well, we're going to balance by the time of the next election. We'll balance the budget in our fourth year. So Reuters asked him a question in a scrum after question period, and he was non-committal, and I just yelled out, so that's a yes, you won't balance the budget. All of a sudden, he's talking about long-term. That over the long term, we will do it. Before, they would always be by our fourth year. Now it's the long term. What's the long term, Ray? 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, the way it was with Pierre Trudeau?
10 years. And Pearson tried to balance the budget. Trudeau Sr. overspent totally, nearly bankrupted the country. But there's another aspect to this. If Morneau and Trudeau wanted to deal with the problem, there are two things they should do tomorrow. The first thing is they should say that the pipeline to the East Coast can be built from Alberta. And once they announce that, investors will start reinvesting in the oil patch because they know that this means Canada can be self-sufficient. Instead of getting oil from the butchers in Saudi Arabia and Iran, we will be getting our oil from Canada. The second thing they should do, and you'll probably disagree with me there.
Okay.
Canada should spend public money tomorrow on the new Bombardier Whisper jet, the quietest, most fuel-efficient passenger jet in history. And if that were to be allowed, they would have to open Toronto's Island Airport to Porter Airlines to use those planes. And guess how many jobs would be created? So this is the one
that would be a lot. But hold on, Ray. I disagree with you that we should put public money in. All they have to do is allow that expansion at Toronto's Island Airport, and Porter will buy, with their own money, 30 of those Whisper jets.
I actually know Bob Deluce, who owns it. He wants to do that, but in the nanny state and the nanny city of Toronto, Ontario, they won't let them. But Brian, just a small piece of history. When I came to Canada, and I was 20 or 21, the big story was Diefenbaker shut down the Avro Arrow project, which was a government-sponsored attempt to build the world's fastest jet fighter that would have broken the world altitude record. And Diefenbaker shut that down. And guess where 30,000 people lost their jobs? Guess where the top engineers went to, Brian?
NASA in Houston.
NASA in Houston to send Americans to the moon less than 10 years later. So the Whisper jet, as I call it, the Bombardier jet, is the wave of the future. And Minister Navdeep Bains, who is the Minister of Infrastructure, industry, and, by the way, a new title Justin gave him, innovation. He said the other day he wants to build Canada's aerospace industry as a global competitor. Well, the way to do it is to open the island airports to Whisper jets. And secondly, this is my point, Boeing and Airbus get tens of billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money in Europe and the United States. Why shouldn't Bombardier get a measly $2 billion, given how much money Justin is promising and wasting in other areas?
Well, I tell you, if they do that without doing something for the West, as you say, like dealing with Energy East, that will cause revolution. Unfortunately, Ray, I think there's a good chance that they will do something like bail out Bombardier and not do anything for the oil industry, not get behind Energy East, not get behind any other oil and gas projects, and not extend EI benefits to struggling families out west. But because Bombardier is headquartered in Montreal, they'll do what they have to protect Quebec.
Yes, they'll do that. And Garneau, the spaceman Garneau, is the Minister of Transport, and he's from Montreal. But I do feel that both projects, if Justin is committed to build infrastructure, and that's why I mentioned Navdeep Bains, the Minister of Industry and Innovation, who has a lot of power. He's the most powerful of the four Sikh ministers. He's probably the most powerful single minister in the cabinet. It's within his power, and he's a smart Sikh, to see sense and to say, we want to create the jobs needed for a Canadian pipeline so Canada is self-sufficient in oil, and make Bombardier the world's leading company for selling and manufacturing the Whisper jet, which is good for Canada.
Well, we'll see if it happens. We'll continue to watch. But between now and March 22nd, there'll be lots of eyes on that deficit number. Ray Hurd, thanks for joining me. We'll chat again soon.
Okay, Brian, thank you.
All right, email me your thoughts on this, brian@therebel.media. Don't go away. We're going to be talking media in a moment. MPs trying to decide how to save the the newspaper industry. That's next here on the Ezra Levant Show.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Ontario residents are being hosed on electricity prices. The latest Auditor General's report says we've been overcharged by $37 billion over the last several years. That works out to nearly $2,800 for every man, woman, and child. Why? Mismanagement and bad policy choices from the Ontario Liberals. It's going to cost us billions more in coming years. Energy Minister Bob Chiarelli won't take responsibility. He's lashing out. It's time for Bob to go. If you agree, go to firebob.ca. That's firebob.ca and make your voice heard.
How much regulation, how much control should the government have over the media business? That's the essence of the question that we were pushing in the Notley affair, the attempt of the NDP government in Alberta to say who is, who isn't a journalist. Premier Notley and her merry band thought they could control the media by declaring certain media outlets as illegitimate, therefore unwelcome. The Premier's backed down for now, but don't think this is the only attempt to see governments exert control over the media, specifically news media. This week in Ottawa, a Commons committee will begin studying the state of media in Canada. The Commons Heritage Committee, chaired by heady "newspapers are burning as we speak" Fry, will examine, and I quote, the medias and local communities. It's just another in a long list of government studies on media that attempt to control who can own what, how much control any one company can have, what they must do, what they must not do. Like past attempts to examine this, well, This study of the media industry is going to take a look at local newspapers. Why? I guess because people are attached to things from the past. I've worked in the newspaper business. It's fascinating. It can be exciting, but the old model is dying. We've got to face it. The old model, of course, being newspapers printed, delivered to your door or the corner store, the newspaper box, and then purchased by readers. The world is moving online, like we are here at The Rebel. But some people are actually still trying to claim, it's just the young folks, regular people, they want dead tree newspapers. Give me a break. Some of the most active people I know online are senior citizens, very web-savvy senior citizens. And my grandmother, who died 4 years ago at 101 years of age, she was online, for goodness sakes. And yet, we're going to have members of parliament this week, most of whom who have no experience in the media business, examining how to save local media outlets, like your local paper. Most likely, they're going to call for greater government regulation, ownership restrictions, and the like, just as they have in the past, oblivious to the fact that while local newspapers have been relatively unregulated, the broadcast industry is heavily regulated via the CRTC, and it has the same kind of ownership concentration so many are worried about now with newspapers. I'm not a huge fan of 3 or 4 companies owning most of the big media outlets in Canada, but I also know the media landscape is changing, and regulating the crap out of the broadcast industry didn't stop ownership concentration there. In fact, some of the ownership restrictions we have in Canada, such as banning foreign investment, have made things worse. Owning a media company of big properties like TV stations and newspapers, it requires deep pockets, the ability to tap into capital markets, and our foreign ownership restrictions, they've limited which Canadians can buy media outlets and also where Canadians looking to invest in media properties can raise capital. But that likely won't matter to the committee studying this issue. As I said, it's headed by Hedy Fry, a long-standing leftist within the Liberal Party and a woman unlikely to call for fewer restrictions on an over-regulated industry. One of the vice chairs of the committee is New Democrat Pierre Nantel, a man that makes Fry look like a right-winger by comparison. There are 2 broadcasters or former broadcasters on the committee, Liberal MP Seamus O'Regan and Conservative Kevin Waugh. I'd love for either one of them to explain to everyone how the CRTC has put a stranglehold on the broadcast industry and that innovation will not be driven by further regulation. But I'm not holding out much hope. O'Regan is still hoping to move up the greasy pole in Trudeau's Liberal government, and he won't want to be offside the Trudeau government's left-wing interventionist pieties. And Waugh, well, I don't know the man, but he strikes me as a good old-fashioned red who will praise his former overlords at the CRTC. I hope he proves me wrong. Bottom line, don't expect much from this committee other than the usual. More calls for government intervention in the economy and the media industry in particular. Comments from Committee Chair Fry should already give you pause for concern. With more Canadians cutting the cord from cable, unsatisfied with high cost and poor offerings, Fry's worried about a Wild West out there where consumers actually have a say in what they watch. Here's what she told Canadian Press. With Show Me and Crave and things like Netflix, what we're having is a whole lot of non-Canadian content coming into our homes, and we have a whole generation that's not really able to see Canadian content, said Fry. When newspapers and magazines are closing down, that adds to that. I mean, why not just suggest going back to the good old days of forcing everyone to watch Don Messer's Jubilee on CBC by limiting channel choice? At least it's Canadian content. Fry also told Canadian Press that the time to act was at hand. Quote, I know that our government has a strong will to deal with this now, Fry said in an interview Tuesday. The thing about politics is that the time comes one day when stuff is facing you hard and you have to do something about it. That time has come. Nantel, her vice chair, not much better. He told CP not only do MPs need to act, they need to act quickly. We have to go more quickly, not to rush headlong into it and make bad decisions, but have a process that is more expeditious. We're there because we've been given the responsibility to make sure the system is viable. We should do it quickly and well. So there you have it, 2 leftists saying that corporations should not have a say in what kind of media you consume, and that you should not have a say in what kind of media you consume. I'd say choosing Netflix or Show Me or Crave. No government should have a greater say in what kind of media you consume. You should have that say. We've got to let them know what we're saying. We need to continue on here at The Rebel, speaking directly to you, outside of the broadcast regulators, outside of the industry regulation that stifle competition and creativity and keep bringing you the truth. And that's why you choose us. You know what, though? We're not alone. We're not the only ones doing this. Some of the fastest growing media operations in Canada follow a similar online model, be it Huffington Post, Vice News, or others. The MPs can debate saving the buggy whip industry at the advent of the automobile. What we're going to do is keep pressing on, keep innovating, keep delivering to the people that matter. You, the audience.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to therebel.media/themegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
Well, that just about wraps the show. I hope you've enjoyed it. Brian Lilley filling in for Ezra Levant in his absence. Don't worry, Ezra will be back next week. I'm in all week, and you can enjoy me here. Of course, so contact me. We'll get to that in a minute. First, some of you already have, including Percy, who writes in, Brian, congratulations for starting to host a radio show in Ottawa. Can you let me know which radio station you will be hosting and at what time I can tune in and listen to you? Well, thanks for the congratulatory message. And by the way, you don't have to worry. I'm not leaving the Rebel. I want to make that clear. Some people didn't understand, but I will be hosting a talk show starting March 7th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern on 580 CFRA in Ottawa. When the time comes, I'll have it posted on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere, how you can tune in and listen online or catch the podcasts. Don writes in from Comox, British Columbia, congrats, I'm going to try and tune into your show when it gets up and running. It will no doubt be a great one. Well, thanks for the kind words, Don, and absolutely it would be a great one. An extension of what we're doing here at The Rebel. Finally, Bob writes in about the federal budget and the deficit. Good morning. This cannot be allowed to occur. This is not what the idiots that voted Selfie King in were promised. Ones that knew better knew this would happen and must protest loud and clear that he is digging Canada in a debt hole that will take years to recover. Well, truer words have never been spoken on that. This is not going to be a small deficit as he promised. It's a huge deficit. It's going to lead to a structural deficit. More on that in coming days. You want to get a hold of me? It's easy. Brian at therebel.media. You can tweet at me. I'm on Twitter once in a while. It's easy. Twitter.com/Brian Lilley. Thanks for watching the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Brian Lilley. We'll see you again tomorrow. And remember, we're on your side.